All right, let's dive into one of the biggest myths there is when it comes to getting wealthy. I want you to forget, just for a moment, the idea that you need a huge pile of cash to even get started. Because today, we're going to explore how the rich don't just earn money, they actually invent it.
You've heard this a million times, right? It takes money to make money. I mean, it's probably the number one reason most people give for why they're not rich. It sounds logical, it feels safe, but really, it's just incredibly limiting.
But what if I told you that whole phrase is really just a comforting lie? You know, it's one of those ideas that keeps us running on the hamster wheel, believing we can't get ahead because we don't have the right resources to start. The truth is, the wealthiest people, they often start with an idea, not a trust fund.
And that brings us to what I call the no money myth. See, the single most powerful asset you have isn't sitting in a bank account somewhere. Nope, it's right between your ears. The biggest thing holding people back isn't a lack of money, it's a lack of financial education and, honestly, the guts to just go for it.
This quote right here, this is a game changer. It gets to the heart of a huge shift in thinking. See, most of us are taught to work for a paycheck. But the rich, they learn a totally different lesson, how to make money. I know, it sounds a little bit like magic, but stick with me and you'll see exactly how it's done.
This is where something called financial intelligence comes into play. It's the skill, really, of understanding that money isn't some fixed, solid object. It's an idea. It's an agreement between people. And when you really, truly get that, you realize you don't have to wait for money to show up. You can learn to create it. And I'm not talking about printing it in your basement. I'm talking about structuring deals and agreements that create value out of thin air.
Okay, I know that all sounds pretty abstract, so let's make it super concrete. We're going to walk through a real-life example of how Robert Kiyosaki, the author of Rich Dad Poor Dad, invented a $40,000 asset in just a few hours. This story proves, without a doubt, that you don't need money to make money.
So picture this. The economy in Phoenix is in a terrible crash. People are panicking, they're selling everything. But while most people saw disaster, Kiyosaki saw a massive opportunity. He found a house that he knew had a true market value of $75,000.
But here's the thing, because of the market crash, the owner was desperate, they just needed out. So the asking price on the courthouse steps was only $20,000. That right there, that's what a crisis looks like to a trained mind. It's a fire sale on assets. Now this is the most important part of the story. He didn't have the 20 grand sitting in his bank account. So what did he do? Did he walk away? Did he say, oh, well, I can't afford it? No way. This is where financial creativity completely changes the game. So here's exactly how the deal went down, step by step. First, he borrowed just the deposit, $2,000 from a friend, promising to pay him back $200 extra for the trouble. Next, as soon as he had the house under contract, he advertised it for $60,000, still a massive bargain, with no money down. A buyer jumped on it and signed a promissory note. He then took that buyer's signed agreement to the title company, and that's what allowed the whole deal to close. From the new buyer's funds, he paid off the original $20,000 seller, and he paid his friend back his $2,200. Just let that sink in for a second.
So after all was said and done, how much of his own money did he use in this entire transaction? Absolutely zero. Not a single penny.
And the final result? A $40,000 asset, that's the buyer's promissory note, was created and placed in his asset column. And it only took about 5 hours of work. Oh, and by the way, that note also generated about $4,000 a year in passive income. He didn't work for it in the traditional sense. He thought his way to it. Now, this story isn't really about real estate. It's about a mindset. It shows that there are basically two different kinds of investors out there, and the one who makes the really big wins, well, they have a very specific playbook.
So what's the difference? Well, most people are what you'd call packaged investors. They go to a broker and buy something off the shelf, like a mutual fund. It's kind of like buying a pre-built computer from a big box store. It's easy, for sure, but you're paying full retail price. The creative investor, on the other hand, they assemble the deal themselves. They're like the person building a custom computer from scratch. It takes more skill, but that's where you find the incredible value.
So how do you become one of these creative investors? You focus on 3 key skills. First, you learn to spot opportunities that everyone else overlooks, like that house in Phoenix. Second, you learn how to raise money. Not having cash is not a dead end. It's just a problem to be solved. You find a partner, you bring in other investors. And third, you organize smart people. You don't have to be the smartest person in the room. You just have to know how to bring the smart people together, lawyers, accountants, brokers, and conduct the orchestra.
So, if there's one thing to take away from all this, it's that your mind is the mint. It is the machine that can literally print your money. It's all about developing the financial intelligence to see a problem, a lemon, and know how to turn it into a multi-million-dollar opportunity.
This quote really just says it all, doesn't it? When that market crashed in Phoenix, what did everyone's eyes see? They saw disaster. They saw fear. But Kiyosaki's trained mind saw something totally different. It saw a massive sale. It saw wealth on a discount rack.
You know, when things go wrong, it's easy to be a cynic. Cynics criticize, they complain, and they're paralyzed by doubt. But winners analyze. They break down the problem. Because analysis opens your mind up to the opportunity that is almost always hiding inside every disaster. So, I'm going to leave you with this question. Stop waiting for the perfect time or for some magical number to appear in your bank account. The real money isn't out there somewhere. It's in here, in your mind. It's in your ability to see what other people miss. So, take a look around. What's the so-called lemon in your world right now that, with a little bit of financial creativity, might actually be a massive hidden opportunity?